Elena Vasquez ironed her scrubs the night before. She did it slowly, carefully, the way her mother had taught her to do things that mattered. She hung them on the back of the door and stepped back to look at them. She had worked 6 years for this moment. 6 years of night shifts, of studying with tired eyes, of eating lunch alone in hospital break rooms, while other people her age were out living differently. None of that felt heavy to her. It felt earned. She arrived at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Phoenix 20 minutes early. The parking lot was half empty. The morning sky was pink and wide, the way Arizona skies get in early October, when summer finally lets go. She sat in her car for a moment, holding her folder of documents against her chest, and told herself the same thing her grandfather had told her years ago when she was afraid of something. You already belong there, you just haven't walked in yet. So she walked in. The front desk nurse gave her a visitor badge and told her the morning briefing started at 7 in conference room B. Elena thanked her and followed the signs down a long corridor that smelled like floor cleaner and coffee. She noticed the photographs on the walls. Veterans in uniform, some in color, some in faded black and white. She slowed down at one of them. A young man in army greens, serious face, somewhere in a jungle she could not name. She thought of her grandfather. She kept walking. Conference room B held around 25 people when Elena stepped inside. Nurses, orderlies, a few administrators. Most of them were talking quietly in small groups. A few looked up when she entered. One woman gave her a small nod and gestured toward the coffee. Then Director Harold Cates walked in. He was a tall man, somewhere in his late 50s, with the kind of face that had probably been handsome once and had since decided it was important instead. He wore a tie and carried a clipboard. He set the clipboard down at the head of the table and looked around the room the way someone looks around a room when they already know they are the most significant person in it. He began the briefing. Announcements, scheduling changes, a note about the parking structure being closed on Thursday. Elena listened and took notes in the small notebook she had brought. Everything was normal, and then it stopped being normal. Cates looked at her. "You," he said. "New hire?" Elena looked up. "Yes, sir. Elena Vasquez. I'm starting on Ward 7 today." He picked up his clipboard and looked at something on it, though later, people in that room would say they were not sure he was actually reading anything. Vasquez. He said it the wrong way, flattening the sounds. She did not correct him. "I'll be honest," he said, still looking at the clipboard. "I'm not sure what the hiring committee was thinking. Our standards here are specific. This is not a community clinic." He set the clipboard down. "What exactly qualifies you for a VA placement?" The room went quiet, the way rooms go quiet when something uncomfortable is happening, and everyone hopes someone else will say something first. Elena answered him evenly. She listed her credentials, her years of experience. Her clinical commendation, she mentioned, without drama, that she was fluent in Spanish, which was relevant because a significant portion of the patient population at that facility spoke Spanish as their first language. Cates made a sound that was not quite a laugh. "We've managed fine without that." He picked up his clipboard again. "Just don't slow the ward down." He moved on to the next item on his agenda, as though nothing had happened. Elena wrote the date in her notebook. She did not look up for a while. The woman who had gestured toward the coffee earlier caught Elena's eye from across the table and gave her a look that was part apology and part helplessness. Elena gave her a small nod back. It was all right. She had been underestimated before. She knew what to do with it. You let it sit behind you, and you walk forward. Ward 7 was at the end of the east corridor, past the physical therapy rooms and the small chapel that always had its door open. It was the long-term care unit, the quietest and in some ways the most demanding ward in the facility. The patients here were not passing through. They were staying. Some had been there for months, some longer. The charge nurse on Ward 7 was a compact, no-nonsense woman named Diane who shook Elena's hand firmly and handed her a tablet with the patient list. 12 patients today. I'll walk you through the first few. After that, you're on your own, but I'm right down the hall. She paused. Ward 7 patients are particular. They've seen a lot of nurses come and go. Don't try to impress them. Just be straight with them. Elena nodded. I can do that. The first few rounds went smoothly. Elena learned names, noted details, asked questions she actually wanted answers to. She did not rush. She did not talk over people. When a 71-year-old Marine named Calvin refused his afternoon medication and told her in no uncertain terms that he did not want to talk about it, she did not push. She set the medication on his tray table, told him she would check back in 30 minutes, and came back in exactly 30 minutes. He took the medication. He did not say thank you, but he held eye contact with her for a moment before she left the room, which she had already learned meant something on this ward. The moment that changed the shape of the day happened mid-morning, in room 714. Sergeant First Class George Holt was 81 years old. He had served in Vietnam, then again, in a capacity he rarely discussed. He had been at the facility for nearly 2 months. According to his chart, he had not spoken to any member of the medical staff in 3 weeks. He answered direct questions with silence. He ate when food was brought to him. He slept. He looked out the window. His family had been told he was declining in a way that was hard to measure, because it was not physical. He simply seemed to be pulling away. Elena read his file in the hallway before going in. Then she set the tablet down and went in without it. She pulled a chair to the side of his bed, not the foot where staff usually stood, and sat down. George Holt was looking out the window. He had a strong face, deeply lined, with white hair cut close to his head. His hands rested on the blanket, still and large. She did not say anything clinical. She did not introduce herself with her title. She said, "My grandfather served in Korea. He never talked much about it either. I used to sit with him anyway." George Holt did not look at her. She stayed. She did not fill the silence with sound. She sat the way her grandfather had taught her to sit, like she had nowhere else to be. After 6 minutes, George Holt said, "What was his name?" "Roberto," she said. "Roberto Vasquez. He was a private first class." George Holt nodded slowly, still looking at the window. "Private first class is a good rank," he said. "Means you know enough to know you don't know everything." Elena smiled. "That sounds right." They talked for 19 minutes. Not about medicine, not about treatment plans, about Arizona, about a river George remembered from childhood, about a dog he had once had named Senator, who refused to come inside in the rain. When Elena finally stood to go, George Holt looked at her directly for the first time. "Come back," he said. "I will," she said. She was back in the hallway, reaching for her tablet, when she noticed something in a patient's medication log that stopped her. A post-surgery patient in room 709 had been prescribed a pain medication that, combined with something else on his current regimen, created a dosage concern. It was the kind of thing that could be easy to miss, especially in a busy handover. She flagged it immediately, wrote a clear note, and called the attending physician directly. The physician reviewed it and confirmed the concern. The medication was adjusted before the afternoon round. Diane stopped her in the hallway after. "Good catch," she said. "That kind of thing matters here." Elena nodded. She went back to work. The afternoon moved the way good working hours move, with a steadiness that has no drama in it, only purpose. She helped a 34-year-old veteran named Marcus through a difficult moment when a sound outside his window sent him somewhere far away and frightened. She sat close and spoke in a low, calm voice, asking him to feel his feet on the floor, the weight of his arms, the texture of the blanket. Little by little he came back. When he was steady, he looked at her and said, "How did you know to do that?" She told him she had studied it on her own time, because she believed it mattered. He was quiet for a moment. "It does," he said. In room 718, she spent 40 minutes with an 86-year-old Air Force veteran named Harold, who wanted to tell her about flying over the Pacific in 1962 and seeing a sunrise that he had never found the right words for. She listened to the whole thing. She asked him 3 real questions. When she left, he was sitting up straighter than he had been when she arrived. She did not know that word was moving through the ward. Veterans notice things. They have spent years in environments where reading people correctly is simply something you learn to do. They watch how someone carries themselves under pressure. They notice whether the eyes match the words. They understand, without having to discuss it, the difference between someone doing a job and someone who came because they meant to. By late afternoon, something was being recognized on Ward 7 that had no paperwork and required no meeting. At 5:47 in the evening, Elena finished her charting and closed her tablet. She said goodnight to Diane, who who told her she had done good work and to come back tomorrow. Elena thanked her and walked down the main corridor of Ward 7 toward the exit. She stopped. 15 patients were in the hallway. Some were standing, some were in wheelchairs. One man was on crutches. One had a mobile IV stand beside him, the bag hanging quietly above his shoulder. They were spread along both sides of the corridor, and they were completely still. All of them were looking at her. For a second, she did not understand what she was seeing, and then she did. One by one, in no particular order, without any signal or any word spoken, they brought their right hands to their foreheads. 15 salutes, some crisp, some slower, all of them exact in their meaning. The corridor was completely silent. Elena stood in the middle of it and felt something move through her that she would not find words for until much later. It was not pride exactly. It was something older than pride. It was the feeling of being truly seen by people who do not see easily. She raised her right hand to her forehead, not like a soldier, she had never been one, but completely, with everything she had. Several of the men nodded. George Holt was at the far end of the corridor, sitting in a wheelchair he rarely agreed to use. He had come out of his room for the first time in days. He did not salute. He simply looked at her with the particular steadiness of a man who has spent a lifetime deciding who is worth trusting and who had made his decision. Elena walked slowly down the corridor. She said goodnight to each of them. She called each one by name. She got every name right. She walked out into the October evening and sat in her car for a while before starting it. The sky had gone dark orange at the edges. She thought about her grandfather. She thought about the morning. She thought about how much space there is between how the day had started and how it had ended, and how you could never see that space from the beginning. She started the car and drove home. In the days that followed, the story moved the way stories move when they carry real weight, quietly at first, then wider. One of the staff members had photographed the corridor moment, and with Elena's permission, it was shared. People who saw it did not scroll past quickly. Letters arrived at the hospital from veterans and their families. 2 nurses who had sat in silence during the morning briefing spoke to administration about a pattern of behavior they had witnessed before. Director Cates was placed on administrative leave while a review was conducted. Elena was called into the administrator's office and offered a permanent position with a formal letter of commendation. She accepted. She asked if she could stay on Ward 7. She could. George Holt's daughter flew in from Denver 2 weeks later for a visit she had been postponing because her father had seemed so unreachable. Elena was there when she arrived. She had told George his daughter was coming. He had asked her to be present. When his daughter walked through the door and saw her father sitting up, alert, looking like himself again, she stopped in the doorway and pressed her hand over her mouth. George Holt looked at Elena and gave her the closest thing to a smile she had seen from him. There are people in every profession who do the work because someone is watching, and there are people who do it because they cannot imagine doing anything else. The difference is always visible to anyone who knows how to look. The 15 men in that corridor knew how to look. They had known how to look for most of their lives. Elena Vasquez had not walked into that hospital to make a point or to answer anyone. She had walked in because her grandfather had served, because people needed care, because she had spent 6 years learning how to give it well. She had walked in carrying everything she had worked for, and on the first day, without planning it, without performing it, she showed 15 people what that looked like. They answered her, the only way they knew how.